Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I wanted to say one thing and piggybacking what Jimmy was saying about the translator, because I'm very familiar about that issue. Translator really creating so much problems. And first, number one, because they have to know the rules. But since most of these translators, English is so limited, my concern is that they may not even understand the rules. So therefore, it's just the way they behave is just not as a translator, actually advocating for the certain candidate. So it is actually against the spirit of democracy, and this is so bad. I just many translators that I know I've seen, they hardly speak any English. So I was wondering, how do they hire? What is the criteria to hire these translators? I think you have to really tighten the, and then they have to be interviewed so that they understand all the rules they have to follow. So I ended up telling those people who speak their own language, literally, telling them who to vote. Yes. And then I numerous people, the Korean senior citizens who wanted interest in voting for me last year, and actually they're told to vote for my opponent because they are all Koreans, because they're members of the group, they're supported by the incumbent. So they were upset, but they were intimidated because they looked like a part of the structure.
Well, one of the problems that we've had, particularly with the Korean language, is an insufficient number of translators. We're not even getting enough people to come forward as translators to fill the positions that we need to fill. So we've tried. ALDEF is a group. You know, we've tried to get more translators through them. I reached out to the mayor's office last year and I said, hey, can you get us some Korean translators? We need more. You know, whatever source you can get. The best answer they came back to us with is they gave us a service that charges $40 an hour. Our budget allows for $200 for a translator for the day. $40 an hour doesn't work for us. So my point is, if you or anybody in this room has information about persons, regardless of any one of the 5 languages, that, well, 4 languages that we need translators for, if you have information about folks that want to do that, we need them.
A bit more. What about, because when I think about this translation issue, you translate this ballot in those 5 languages that also provide interpreters. Why do we need both? Of course, I understand it takes 2 to really make sure they would vote for what they want to. But if you think very objectively, they can be handled with 1, either translators only or the translations only. As long as there's enough translation, written guidance in their own language, you hand it together with the ballot, they should be able to handle it without translators, so that we can eliminate this.
I actually have a very short answer for you on that. The federal government says we have to do it. That's not, I'm not punting on that one. That's just true. And the problem is, we had, was it pre-qualification, right? With the feds, we were under federal oversight that they just quote unquote did away with, right? Well, they really didn't do away with it. What they said was there was no longer going to be any automatic federal oversight. So we're out from under the umbrella of federal oversight presently. But if we do anything that they find to be offensive to the National Voter Rights Act, we can be opted back in. And the problem is, if we get opted back in, we're opted back in all 5 boroughs. Before we only had 2 boroughs. We'd be opted back in all 5 boroughs. And what does that mean? We couldn't so much as move a poll site across the street without getting a federal judge to sign off on it if we got opted back in for pre-clearance. So it's something that we're very sensitive to, and we make sure that we don't do anything that runs afoul of the federal courts. A, because you shouldn't do it. You never want to be, you don't want the Eastern District knocking on your door telling you broke a federal law and come with these nice FBI agents. That's number 1. Number 2, it's a danger. Because if we do something, even inadvertently, that's deemed to be a significant violation of the National Voter Rights Act, we could be opted back in for pre-clearance. It would cover all 5 boroughs, and then we really got a problem.
Have any questions that we weren't able to address to Mike directly, just get them to me and I'll make sure that we sit down and answer them.
I will publish her number, or you can send me an email, and I will send it to Valerie, because there are other questions that people have sent me, you know, who couldn't make it tonight. And there are a lot of issues, there are many, many issues, but I'm sorry, we only have time for 2 more questions. So,
You pick.
I'll pick this gentleman.
My name is Dilip, and I work very closely with the Aldaf and Asal, and Valerie was very helpful whenever we had a question. She was very helpful. So the question is, when she just said that they have the Board of Election does good outreach in the different community also, but how do you define, like how do you do the outreach with the South Asian community? Because there are, I see lots of the South Asian newspapers, they didn't receive any outreach from the Board of Election, and you said that we give the advertisement in the newspaper. So suppose we have the right information, how we can supply to you that these are the newspaper very prominent in the community, so that's how we can drive that's the only suggestion.
Yeah.
So in terms of the language access, we had a working group. ALDEF was a member, there were other various community-based organizations, and it was the consensus of the group. They helped us identify the newspapers that we had to target. So it's Bangladesh Times and Weekly Tikana.
No, I'm a part of this group.
Right, so, however, we have said many, many times, we don't have a copyright on any of our content. And although our budget is limited, the content, we encourage local newspapers, community-based newspapers to help us get our message out. We're limited in terms of the budget, but there's no reason why another community-based organization can't work with us, or newspaper, work with us and help us disseminate that information. So if you have contacts with newspapers or other organizations, civic groups that you'd like us to reach out to, either for interpreters, to get additional interpreters, or just for overall public education, you'll have my email and we can work together.
Okay, I'm sorry, one more question. Yes.
Yes. Is there any current policy on utilizing non-invasive biometric ID to identify the voters who show up to vote, other than presenting a signature book and asking them to copy the signature above them?
There has been no discussion either legislatively or internally that I'm aware of.
It would drastically limit the amount of, what's the right word?
Well, I will tell you, I recently read a case that happened in Wisconsin, and the Wisconsin decision of the Eastern District of Wisconsin has had a chilling effect on voter ID laws throughout the country. It's the most recent federal precedent. It is not the highest court in the land. I suspect that the governor of Wisconsin will pursue other legal remedies, and perhaps a higher court than the Eastern District of Wisconsin will interpret voter identification issues. It's about a 110-page decision. The meat of it is that the state of Wisconsin was not able to advance a legitimate state purpose for requiring the presentation of identification. That's basically the meat of the case. I'm not endorsing the case. I'm simply saying that I read it, and that this is what one fairly high federal court decided with respect to ID, and it's being interpreted, at least amongst the election administrators, that is a blow to the ID laws throughout the country.
The 3,700 registered A-type voters, one in 1,900 in Manhattan, New York City.
Well, the actual instances of persons going to the polling place and pretending to be somebody else are very small. That having been said, we have to clean up the voter rolls. And also, I think it's pervasive in the sense that we have a lot of people on the rolls that don't belong there, right? And most of them just sit there and nothing happens with them. But what it's also doing is it's giving a false impression that voter apathy is higher than it really is. Because to the extent that we have people on the books that don't belong there, and we know we do, and we're basing voter turnout, percentage of voter turnout, on an artificially inflated number, we're given the false impression that voter turnout is going down. Whereas people are dying every day. Right? And so the voter rolls are staying artificially high, and maybe the turnout's staying the same. Right? So my point is, I subscribe to the theory that positive energy, God bless you, breeds positive energy. Right? And so if we get our act together and get the voter rolls reduced down to much closer to the number they should be, and people actually realize that maybe not only 25% of the people are voting, maybe 35% of the people are voting. They may say, you know what, maybe this is something I want to get involved in. And they'll be like you guys, spending, a few hours on your night when you could otherwise be home with your families or doing other things, or, watching the Ranger game. Maybe they scored a couple of goals tonight, I don't know. But you could be doing other things than being here. The reason that you guys are here is because you're concerned about your individual communities in a local way, but of course in a larger way you're concerned about the country and our future moving forward. And if we're going to have a bright future moving forward, we need to preserve the fundamental tenets of the voting process, without question.